A quiet December Sunday morning in Hemel Hempstead. Cold, dark, still, silent. But beneath the silence, something was stirring.
Thank you for everybody phoning in at the moment. Right across the Three Counties area, most certainly in Hertfordshire and in Luton as well, people felt an explosion.
Emergency. Hello, there's just been an explosion on Woodhall Farm. Woodhall Farm? Yes, in Hemel Hempstead.
Hello, can I help you?
Yeah, hello. I'm sure you've had lots of calls about this already, but I'm phoning to say that there's been an explosion on Woodhall Farm.
Yeah, do you know what it is?
No, it's blown. We live about 2 streets away and it's blown all our windows out.
6:01 a.m, the calm shattered. A deafening explosion tore through the town. Windows shattered miles away. Smoke towered into the sky, so vast it was seen from space.
We rushed to the window, looked out. We saw this massive ball of flame, and our first thoughts were that it was another Lockerbie. We thought it was a plane crash.
The windows shook, the house rattled, but out the back of the house there was this orange glow, and I stood there, looked and thinking, what the heck is that?
People poured into the streets, silent, drawn by the blazing skyline. It was surreal.
It is actually Satan coming to Earth in the form of oil.
And some of those flames are at least reaching 200 feet high.
So there's been another explosion that's taken out the building?
There has been, because you could walk down there yesterday, and all them cars were still in
You just look at the utter destruction. It was, there's got to be dead people. There's got to be. You know, how could a catastrophe like this happen and it wouldn't kill anybody?
The shockwave didn't stop at the town's edge. It crossed borders. It was heard in Holland. Then came the realization, the scale, the gravity, the horror.
We have been informed by experts that this is possibly the largest incident of this kind in peacetime Europe.
Suddenly, Hemel Hempstead was in the spotlight.
There are over 100 firefighters on the site, and they're waiting for enough foam to arrive to give them a realistic chance of controlling the blaze. But that may not be for several hours, may not be until tomorrow, and they expect this fire to burn for several days yet.
And for residents and businesses, this was just the beginning. The disruption would last for months. For some, the damage was irreversible.
7 months on, it's not on. It's still going. It's still got problems. We have to move out because the house is starting to fall apart.
And the community received the kind of attention it had never known before.
I can't do very much except to offer you nothing but the greatest possible sympathy. I can well imagine it was a real horror.
Then came the search for answers.
It's considered by the HSC and the Environment Agency to be a significant event. It is therefore one that merits a major incident investigation.
My name is Eric Johnson. I was one of the first journalists on the ground that morning, a morning that changed Hemel Hempstead forever. This is the story of the Buncefield explosion, told through the voices of those who lived it, lost through it, and still carry its echoes. These are their memories, captured then, revisited now. Hemel Hempstead, December 2005. A quiet town preparing for Christmas. Families decorating trees, children writing lists, and the industrial estate ticking over as usual.
Life before the explosion was, for us, we were new grandparents, so we were delighted with that. We were looking forward to Christmas with our first grandchild. When we first moved to Woodhall Farm, we were aware of Buncefield being here. We wondered what would happen if Buncefield ever went up, and our conclusion was that we probably wouldn't know much about it because we'd be wiped off the face of the earth, really, so it would be quick and painless.
That's Sue Ferguson, a retired administrator who still lives near Buncefield, a part of the town locals had got used to, as Sue Meehan, a general manager of a local cleaning company, explains.
Maylands Avenue area was certainly busy. It was developing, it was always developing. There was more and more businesses coming onto that area. Buncefield Depot was always part of the landscape in the time that I worked for the cleaning company and the time that I lived in Kings Langley. I don't think anybody ever really considered it.
The Buncefield oil depot opened in 1968, quietly tucked just outside Hemel Hempstead, around 25 miles northwest of London. For decades, it operated in the background, out of sight, out of mind. But the scale of its operations was anything but quiet. Each year, Buncefield handled over 2.3 million metric tons of fuel, petrol, diesel, aviation fuel, delivered by pipeline and road tankers. And yet, the risks were known, as Andrew Cook, managing director of Fujifilm Electronic Imaging, reveals.
I do remember one session. We had our boardroom which overlooked the oil depot, and we were doing a risk management training. And they were talking about examples. The consultant was saying, so let's think about any risks. And somebody jokingly, and this was probably about 2 years before the explosion, looked across and said, well, that place could blow up. And so we used that as a bit of an example as risk management.
In the early hours of December the 11th, 2005, something began to go wrong at the Buncefield oil depot. Unleaded petrol was being pumped into a storage tank, but beneath the surface, a silent failure was unfolding. By dawn, something was in the air, something invisible, volatile, and potentially deadly. Then, the blast. A massive explosion equivalent to 30 tons of TNT shook the ground. It registered 2.4 on the Richter scale, matched by the collapse of the World Trade Center in 2001. The shockwave was felt miles away.
Say a very good morning to Jim Baker. Morning, Jim.
Hi, good morning, Ian. Just as a matter of interest, my colleague Steve Weston, who often pops up here doing the weather, he lives and works from home in Suffolk, South Suffolk, and he heard the boom over there.
Jo Catini, a healthcare assistant and Hemel resident, bolted up in her bed when the blast occurred, her home crumbling around her.
My daughter was covered in glass from her top bunk in her bedroom. I called 999 and it was engaged, and I just thought, what on earth is going on?
A series of large explosions has taken place close to the M1 in Hertfordshire. It's understood that the Buncefield fuel depot in Hemel Hempstead is ablaze. A spokesman for Hertfordshire Police said that there are casualties and police, fire and ambulances are attending.
The blast was heard as far away as Holland. The fire burnt for days. The smoke, thick, acrid, hung over the town. David Herring was a police community support officer at the time.
At that time, we used to take our police radios with us all the time. So I turned my police radio on, got in touch with the control room and said, I heard an explosion, something's happened, what has happened? And they filled me, they briefed me in with that detail. I wasn't on duty, I didn't work in that area. I said, well, do you need anyone? They said, we need as many people as we can get hold of.
Within minutes, emergency services were mobilised. Among the first to respond was firefighter Andy Walker, then serving on Blue Watch at Hemel Fire Station.
We were laying in our beds in the dormitory, fast asleep, and then we heard this almighty explosion. Everyone literally sat up straight away. I remember hearing footsteps running across the mess deck upstairs where one of the firemen put the bells down, as we call it. So we quickly got dressed, ran to the appliance thinking a plane had come down round Maidens Avenue.
As the morning stretched into the afternoon, the sun still partially blocked by the thick black smoke that stretched across southeast England, the flames showed no signs of dying down.
When we got there, we realised that everything had been destroyed. The tanks were still going bang. I can remember the noise, the roar. It was quite deafening being so close to it, with just the roar of the fuel fire and the tanks still exploding. We realised that we didn't have the men or equipment to deal with it, but because there was still a life risk, we knew that we were going to have to go closer to search the premises. So after searching the offices, running through, shouting out to see if we could hear anyone and breaking doors down and the ceiling was down, we worked our way through the office constantly with the roar and the explosions going on just outside. And I remember looking up and there was, I'd say about 50 metres away, there was a big tank glowing orange that you knew was going to explode at any time.
Firefighters drawn from across the country faced grave risks, not knowing they could be stood next to unexploded tanks.
People were acutely aware of the risk of further explosions and further tank ruptures.
Derek McLeod, watch commander at Watford Fire Station, came face to face with the dangers.
I think the scenario that the authority had always planned for and everyone had planned for is, a single tank rupture. What happened with Buncefield, it involved more than one tanks. And then what you were acutely concerned about was the vapours that could pool, that could explode if they come into contact with ignition sources.
Emergency crews scrambled to secure the chaos. David Herring was one of them, tasked with keeping the public safe from what no one could yet understand. What he saw was confusion. What he feared was worse.
We put on roadblocks to stop vehicles going through. That was the first thing we'd done. We actually had this bizarre incident where people were trying to get to the area to take photographs, and we were just like stopping. People saying, "You go the other way. It's dangerous. This is dangerous." We don't actually fully know what's going on. And at that time, what we was very concerned about, and everybody was very fearful, is a secondary explosion. We had no concept of whether that was a likelihood. We didn't know what was coming next.
Radio stations and TV news channels rolled continuous breaking news for days. This was the story that everyone was talking about while the flames raged. The scramble for information intensified.
Let's get more now on that explosion at the Buncefield oil depot in Hemel Hempstead. We're going to talk to Jane Vine, who's the media manager for Hertfordshire County Council. Morning, Jane.
Good morning.
Now, can you give us any more details about what's actually happened at the site then?
As I understand it from Fire and Rescue, they have 10 pumps at the incident and a specialised foam unit which has come from Buckinghamshire. They are telling me that there are 20 tanks believed to be involved in the fire, and they're searching the site at the moment. They can't confirm numbers of casualties though.
But miraculously, there were no fatalities. Hertfordshire Constabulary's Chief Constable Frank Whiteley updated journalists about casualties.
In terms of the site itself, there were a number of staff at the site at the time of the accident, and work is clearly still being undertaken to assess and collate information about their status. However, at this stage, we believe there are around 36 casualties, and I would emphasise that the vast majority of these are not serious injuries and are being treated at local hospitals. We think at the moment about 4 people are more seriously injured.
As the smoke continued to billow into the sky, the scale of the disaster became clear. Homes destroyed, residents evacuated to local leisure centres, businesses flattened, futures uncertain. Fennell Transport was one of hundreds of businesses hit hard. David Fennell, the chairman, counts himself lucky.
If it had happened on a Monday, I probably wouldn't be sitting here, because my office was on the first floor at Enterprise House, and the windows were shattered and there's a piece of glass stuck in the wall above my desk.
One of the worst hit companies was Fujifilm Electronic Imaging. Their building was devastated. Moments after the first explosion, Andrew Cook drove up, not knowing what to expect.
This is very dangerous in here. Show the safe. Point the light at the safe.
There's the safe there.
The safe is intact.
Yep, and I'm trying to see if the one next to it is.
It was just chaos. There was smell in the air of burning fuel, and of course there were worried policemen and all sorts of stuff going on. And we were driven to the edge of our building, and it was a catastrophe. I've never ever seen anything like it. It was just utter destruction, because we had a metal framed building with cladding on the sides and on the roof, and it had all been blown apart. So there were lumps of cladding scattered across the road, and there was, of course, weird noises coming from the building because there was water gushing out where the pipes had been ripped apart. And the really spooky thing was the cars that in the car park. They had been crushed. absolutely crushed. And at some point, somebody said it's like Godzilla had stamped on them.
But inside the wreckage was something critical, top secret technology. Its loss could mean millions of pounds gone and jobs with it. Andrew was instructed he had to retrieve it.
We thought about lots of different solutions, but I needed a cat burglar. And so that's what we did. I found through a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, somebody who has that sort of reputation of being able to get in secure buildings and remove things that are valuable. We met this guy who showed us his hobbies. Again, they were sort of hobbies that involved weapons and guns and things like that. And we struck a deal which went something like 5,000 now and the balance when we get the tapes. And we booked him, and sure enough, he and his mate somehow got past the police cordon, and they somehow got in, and they got upstairs and they took these our servers, which were sort of blocks with tapes in, and they somehow ripped them out and put them in their van, and we handed over a wad of cash in return for some very valuable tapes.
While some businesses were trying their hardest to get in, many homeowners were trying their best to keep people out. Joe Catini's husband scrambled to secure their house as a fear of looting spread around the town.
As we were trying to get away, my husband stayed here to try and board up the house because there was so many people. I was really worried about everything coming in, you know, people getting in the house, people were walking towards the scene. It was just chaos.
Police were stretched thin. David Herring was among the first responders.
Looting became a problem after that, but at that time, because it was so soon, we didn't actually see that at the time. We were so busy dealing with the public safety element and keeping people away. We didn't have enough people, we didn't have enough vehicles in the first hour to be able to do that. So it was really quite a challenge to be able to think about where was the most vulnerable places, where are people going to be.
News of looting hit the wires.
Yeah. Mr. Whiteley, there was an agency report earlier on today that suggested that there was some looting going on. Are you aware of that, or has there been any looting?
I'd have to say we're not aware of any looting. We have a significant number of police officers in those cordons who will ensure that looting doesn't take place, and if anybody contemplates that, and I've certainly no reason to believe they are doing, then they will be dealt with very severely.
The fire burnt for 32 hours. 250,000 litres of foam were used, 95% of the UK supply. But beneath the ashes, the questions were already rising. What caused the explosion? Who was responsible? And could it happen again? The Health and Safety Commission was the body responsible for health and safety regulation in Great Britain. It launched a full-scale investigation.
My name is Bill Callaghan and I chair the Health and Safety Commission. We hope to make sure that a report addresses the key issues of risk to the public, risk to the community, but we want to make sure that the report's findings can be used by the industry to make sure that these sites can be run safely.
The findings were stark.
My name is Taff Powell. I was a member of the Independent Investigation Board into the Buncefield disaster and conducted the investigation. There were catastrophic failures in the safety management from the very top down of the organisation. A single tank 912, was overfilled, releasing about 300 tonnes of petrol, forming a vapour cloud that ignited with terrifying force and essentially blew down the entire neighbourhood. Key findings were that critical safety devices had failed that might have stopped the tank from overfilling or alerted the control room staff to the pending disaster. Worse still, the design of the safety systems was fundamentally flawed, it was wrong, and even the maintenance and testing procedures were partly to blame. The headline cost of the disaster was over £1 billion in those days, but the true cost was much greater. There were 43 injuries, But had this not occurred early in the morning on a frozen Sunday in mid-December, dozens, if not hundreds, of people would have been killed.
The companies involved, including Total UK, Chevron and Hertfordshire Oil Storage Limited, were fined nearly £10 million, but for many, it wasn't enough. Heidi Brazier, along with her husband and 7 children, endured long spells away from their Leverstock Green home after it suffered severe structural damage.
I think that it's money that's well needed for the residents and the community to help them rebuild, and for the uninsured and the people that are out of their jobs and things. However, I do feel very much that where's the public face that should come forward to speak to the people from the company rather than just throwing money at us.
Watford-based civil litigation lawyer Des Collins got involved early in 2006 and dealt with hundreds of claims on behalf of residents affected.
The trial commenced in the High Court in London, and the astounding development was that I think it was on the 5th or the 6th day of trial, when everyone's just settling in for a 3-month run, Total got to their feet and said, effectively, we've changed our mind, we're now admitting liability, which was good in the sense that the victims felt they could begin to put it behind them. It was bad in that the victims had been dragged through the best part of 3 years of litigation when it really wasn't necessary.
Following court proceedings in 2010, Total UK apologised and said,
"We fully accept our responsibilities for the events that took place at Buncefield in 2005 and recognise the devastating consequences that the incident has had on the surrounding communities and businesses. This was an unprecedented incident from which we and the industry have learnt many lessons."
And a Chevron spokesperson added,
"Chevron's first priority is safety. We remain grateful that there were not more serious injuries as a result of the incident."
20 years on, the legal battles are over, but the legacy of Buncefield and the questions it raised still linger.
Lord God, we also come to say thank you for the miracle of timing that saved so many lives on that Sunday morning. Thank you, Father, it wasn't at 3:30 on a Friday afternoon. We thank you that there were so few people hurt, and we pray for those who were, and that none were killed.
It is a miracle. No one died. Yet 2 decades have passed. The scars remain, as local residents Sue Ferguson and Joe Catini reveal.
The smell of the smoke, you could almost taste the fuel. I think a lot of us said that, didn't we? It was something. And my mother was never the same again. She had emphysema and she was never the same again after that.
Our daughter having to have some counselling a little bit later on, little things like they were doing the Great Fire of London at school, and she just couldn't cope with that. So even now, she's nearly 29, she's not a great person around fire and whatever. She won't light a candle.
Although concerns about the site's safety may have faded for some, David Herring has fresh worries.
I think it's something that probably shouldn't have happened. It was probably avoidable. But what bothers me now is that they are now developing that whole area around it.
Since the Buncefield explosion, new housing estates have appeared just minutes from the depot, and at the time of recording, another is rising even closer. Taff Powell and Des Collins share their views.
Would I live next to Buncefield? If my dream house was being built there and I could afford it, probably not. It would be a serious disadvantage for me to live near a high hazard site.
The impetus behind the present government to build houses goes right across the board. The present government will build on brownfield land. There's a huge impetus on local authorities to allow this to happen. As we know to be the case, the planners are relaxing restrictions, allowing development to take place on brownfield land. You will find that they get closer and closer to sites like Buncefield.
Questions about building so close to Buncefield have been raised by some of our interviewees. We approached Vistry Group, the developer behind Beaumont Manor, a new estate near the site. A spokesperson said,
Vistry's Beaumont Manor development is located outside of the Buncefield no-build zone, but within the Health and Safety Executive's consultation distance of the Buncefield oil terminal. As such, the land was thoroughly examined to assess its suitability on which to build, and having done so, the HSE did not raise any objections.
After hearing from the developer, we also approached Dacorum Borough Council, the authority responsible for planning decisions in the area. It said,
Following the Buncefield incident in 2005, the Health and Safety Executive introduced new development proximity zones. Alongside this was updated guidance on the types of development considered to be acceptable within those zones, and stricter advice on acceptable development near high hazard sites, such as large-scale petrol storage sites. We have worked in line with updated guidance from the HSE and other relevant bodies to ensure land use planning reflects lessons learned. All planning applications in the vicinity of Buncefield have been assessed against this guidance, and risk considerations have been central to decision making. Developments such as Swallowfields and Beaumont Manor were determined in accordance with these requirements, ensuring compliance with national safety standards. We remain fully committed to prioritising safety in all planning decisions to protect our community now and in the future.
20 years on, the explosion has faded from headlines, but for those who lived through it, the memory and fear remain.
It is largely been forgotten about because it was just a one-off and people think it'll never happen again, but it could.
This was the Buncefield explosion, a blast that shook Britain. No lives lost, a miracle, but the memory still smoulders.